All right. Well, hello, good afternoon, and welcome to our final session in our TrinDocs virtual event. My name is Bobby Haggard, and I'm one of the consultants here at TrinSoft. Let's first make sure everyone is logged in to the correct final session. So you have tuned into this session titled Power BI, Financial Reporting with Business Intelligence. In this informative session, Nicholas Jackson from our consulting team will review how your organization can empower everyone with the tools they need to be data heroes with financial reporting and visualizations. Now, a little bit of housekeeping notes before we jump in. First up, we went ahead and muted all of the phones and background noise, trying to keep down that background noise. So if you have any questions, which we absolutely encourage, please use the Q&A feature of the Zoom webinar tool. Our team will be managing those questions throughout the webinar. So if you have a question, we will answer it at the end, but please go ahead and drop it in at any time so that we can see that and be ready to answer that. Secondly, if you would like the presentation slides or the video recording, just drop your email into the Q&A and we'll know what that means, and we'll provide that to you once it's available at the conclusion of the event in the coming days. Finally, don't forget, at the conclusion of the session, you will receive an evaluation. If you fill out the evaluation by the end of the day, Friday, then you will be automatically registered for our giveaway, which we'll announce the winner of and send out gifts next week. All right, with that, real quick pop quiz here for us around reporting. So I went ahead and launched that quiz, and it's really just asking how your organization does financial reporting today. We know from some people it's manual export to Excel and manual manipulation within Excel. Others are using dynamics reporting packages such as Management Reporter, Active Account Schedules. Others are using third-party tools such as Active Reporter, Jet Reports, all sorts of other options. And then some are already using Power BI, and they're just looking to how they can add to that today. So see those results coming in. We see a lot that are using some manual exports. Others are using native dynamics, and yet still some others are using third parties, with a couple using Power BI already, which is great. So, all right, well, thanks for that feedback. We'll go ahead and end that, and we'll dive right in here. All right. So just a reminder, this is the last session of our TrinCon virtual event for 2021. If you miss any of our previous sessions, our session at 10 o'clock was over Dynamics GP and how to move that to the cloud or cloud options. The session at 11 was all about migrating to Business Central and some of the tips and best practices of migrating data along the way. The session we just completed at noon was with Jeremy Pritchard on the TrinDocs team. He reviewed trend forms and some of the automations that can be included beyond Dynamics. And then finally, back and clean up here at our last afternoon session. As I mentioned, Nicholas Jackson is going to dive into Power BI and how to use that powerful visualization and reporting tool. So if you miss any of those previous sessions, just keep checking our website. We are going to be posting these video recordings and the presentation slides. So we'll be happy to get those sent to you as well, if you just drop your email into the Q&A, or just keep checking our site where we'll get those posted in the coming days. All right, let's do a quick introduction here. Nicholas Jackson is a senior consultant and project manager with the Dynamics side of the house. Nicholas has over 5 years of experience with project management and software development, and he brings a lot of great experience with all things Business Central, NAV, and Power BI. So at this time, I'm going to turn the presentation over to you, Nicholas, and let you take it away.
Thank you, Bobby, for that introduction. As Bobby mentioned, my name is Nicholas Jackson. I'm a senior consultant here at TrinSoft. Many of you may know that you may know me as your Business Central consultant, but I also do quite a bit of Power BI work as well. And so today I wanted to give you guys a high-level overview of a sample of a financial reporting Power BI dashboard that we have created for other clients, and just want to give you guys some tips and tricks along the way, and just give you guys an insight into some options that you have for creating financial reports inside of Power BI. So what I will do in this presentation is I'll walk you through this dashboard that I have already built here, some of the features and how some of it was built. I will add another data source to this dashboard, and I will add another visual. I'll add a slicer to this report so that you can filter this data in a few different ways. So I will assume that people do have a little bit of experience with Power BI. This isn't a complete 101. We have done presentations in the past on a complete 101, starting from bare bones, starting from scratch, assuming you know nothing about Power BI. And if you want, feel free to reach out to any of us here at TrinSoft and we can send that webinar over to you. But I assume that most people will understand a little bit about Power BI, how to download the application, a little bit about how to navigate it. But if you do need that background, I'm more than happy to provide it, and we can send you over the link to the previous webinars that we have done. So here we are inside of Power BI. I prefer the desktop edition, and so that's what I'm going to be running through today. What we have here is a sandbox company, just a demo company. The company name is called Cronus, and they are a furniture store. And this is the company and their logo. And we've got a little bit of things, a few different things here on the dashboard. So in this section here, we've got a table that provides information about the P&Ls for this company. Here we've got a little gauge for the net income growth with a target there. We've got a breakdown here in income, cost of goods sold, and expenses. And then we also have income versus cost of goods sold as a line graph. I can jump into these here in just a minute. Now, before I get too deep, I want to explain a little bit about what Power BI is good for and what Power BI is not so great for. Power BI is great if you want to interact with your data. If you want to look at it in different ways, if you want to massage it, if you want to visualize it, this is a great way to do that. Power BI is absolutely built for it, and I'll show you here in a second. There's lots of opportunities to slice and dice your data and look at it and interact with it in that way. If you're looking for something to print out as a report to take to your quarterly board meetings or something like that, Power BI necessarily isn't a great tool for that. There, you're still better off doing something like Excel or something inside of your native ERP systems. And most of our clients' cases inside of Business Central or Nav, you're better off doing account schedules. So it's really different tools for different jobs, trying to meet the different goals. And so we want to make sure that people understand what Power BI is good for and what it is not so great for. And that's often a question that we get. So let me jump into these different visuals that I have in here already. But actually, before I do that, let's take a look at the data that we have. So I've already done a bit of the data setup here. All of this data is being pulled automatically from Business Central tenant. This is a hosted Business Central tenant. It's what we're most familiar with. It's what a lot of our clients use. And so I thought that would be good for this demo. So we've got a couple of different tables and a few relationships. So I'll jump through them first. First up, we've got our fact GL entries. Now, I like to preface my tables, whether it's a fact or a dimension. Again, fact is where kind of all your, it's where your master data is, the data that you're going to be reporting off of. And then your dimensions, the DIM underscores, those are the ones that are going to have your supplemental data. So that's going to be the information that helps support your fact entries. So here we've got our fact GL entries. These are pulled from Business Central. Now I did filter this down quite a bit. There's not all the columns here listed for your GL entries. But the other thing that I did was I went through here and I added quite a few different measures inside of this table. So there's a few, regarding summaries of cost of goods sold, and for income, you can see some of these are actually inverse. That's a good tip. You'll notice here on this visual, you can see that your income is positive and your cost of goods sold and your expenses are negative. Well, if you just run a trial balance, you're actually going to see the signs flipped. You're going to see your income as negative and your cost of goods sold and expenses as positive. That's because incomes are normally credit accounts. Now, most executives don't want to see a negative income on their statement, and that can kind of worry people. So almost every time that I am going to build a report that's going to have financials associated with it, I'm going to actually flip the signs for income, cost of goods sold, and expense. People are used to seeing income as positive and expense as negative. So when you add them all together, you get a positive number, and positive is good. Whereas if you kept the original signs, it would actually be negative, would be good. So that's one tip and something I would recommend. In order to do that inside of Power BI, I added quite a few of these measures that just simply take those values and flip them. All right, next I've got a few different dimension values over here. So next up is the chart of accounts. So this is really good for summarizing for categories. So here I've got my GL entries. Each one of these GL entries is going to say the GL account name and number that entry was posted against, but we need a little bit more information about those GL accounts. So I brought in the chart of accounts, which is going to have all the information, well, most of the information that I'm going to need in order to categorize these GL entries. There is actually one other thing that I was missing on the chart of accounts table, and that was the chart of accounts categories. So inside of Business Central, each one of your categories is going to have each one of your accounts can have a category or multiple categories assigned to it. And I wanted a little bit more information. So that is my next big tip, is I would highly recommend putting as much data inside of your ERP or inside of your data source as possible, and putting really not worrying about trying to massage your data or add extra data inside of Power BI. So for example, instead of adding an account category inside of Business Central, or instead of trying to add a account category information inside of your chart of accounts inside of Power BI, I would recommend trying to pull as much data as you can from your data source and bring it into Power BI that way. Power BI is not great at adding data or adding new rows to tables. There are ways that you can do it if you really need to, but I highly suggest try and make as much information as possible come from your data source. So in this case, the account categories, I was able to pull from Business Central, and those are tied to a single account, and those accounts then flow to your GL entries. You'll see how this interacts here in a second. And then one other table, almost every Power BI report is going to have one. It's going to have a calendar table. This one is pretty simple. I've just got the date, which is the master record. I've got this set up as month and year. Those are really the two fields that I needed for dates. We're not going to drill any more into that. We're not going to do it by day, by week, anything like that. But again, lots of opportunities to do that. You can add as many different columns do you want as to your calendar table. All right, let's take a look at some of the data itself. So if we come over here to our data preview, and let's take a look at our fact table first. So this is a pretty standard fact table for your GL entries. One other thing to keep in mind, and another tip, is I would recommend pulling your raw data from your ERP system as individual entries and doing all the summaries inside of Power BI. If you're trying to pull summaries, if you had a way to pull month-end values or something like that from your ERP system instead of pulling your regular, just the bare bones, the original entries that create those summaries, you can do that, but it's not going to let you drill down as much as you may want to. So having every single transaction is, it can be a lot of data. So for example, this is 5,809 rows. That's a lot of data. And are we going to use all of it? Do we need the granularity? Maybe not necessarily for the report that we're building, but it's nice to at least have the option to have that data if we need it. Other thing is Power BI is really optimized. It's highly designed for large amounts of data. This one is 5.8K rows. I've worked with Power BI reports that have over 1 million rows. Yes, it does slow down, but it's absolutely handled it well. So don't be afraid to overwhelm. If you have lots of GL entries, that's perfectly fine. Power BI is designed to handle it. So about each one of these GL entries, we got a few key pieces of information here. So we've got our posting date, the GL account number, GL account name, we've got a description, we've got a few other things over here, and amount. Those are the main ones that we are going to be using for this. We do have a few extra options, dimension sets, balance accounts. You can do that if you're familiar with Business Central. You can build lots of reports off of that. And then entry number. Entry number is actually going to be an important one. This is the primary key. That's kind of a technical database term, but a primary key is a field that uniquely identifies that row. So this entry number is unique for this row. There is no other row inside of this table that is going to have this entry number. So that's really useful. I'll show you here in a second. We're going to bring in some extra data, and it's going to be based off of that entry number. So it's going to be crucial to have that. All right, next, let's take a look at our chart of accounts. So here we've got our chart of account number, the name of the account. We got income sheet or income statement or balance sheet. And this can be nice. This is just a quick way, in this case, we're just looking at the P&L accounts. We're not looking at the balance sheet accounts. Most people are going to be more interested in the P&L side than the balance sheet side. You can absolutely build reports if you want to look at aged AP, aged AR. Those are some really good use cases for looking at the balance sheet, and Power BI can be really good at that. But for this demonstration, we're just going to focus on the P&L accounts. Next, we have account categories and account subcategory descriptions. So these are also going to be useful. And some other information that just came in and I left it inside of the query. We can go one step up, take a look at the chart of account categories, and we can see here we've got entry number, description, account category, and report definition. So one field that I added here was this account category sorting. So I added this inside of Power Query. And what this does is it tells Power BI when I sort on the account category, I want to use this number in account category sorting. So by default, since this is a text column, it's going to try and sort it alphabetically. But when I go to build my Power BI report, I don't want them to show alphabetically. So this is my next tip. Use account category sortings or use secondary sorting columns to sort values that might be out of order according to Power BI. So for example, on my P&L, I want to see income first, then I want to see cost of goods sold below that, and then I want to see expenses below that. So I created a new column that said, all right, when I sort on account category, income is going to be first. So that is 4. Cost of goods sold is going to be next, which is 5. And then there's expense, which is going to be 6. So I've also done that for the balance sheet accounts up here, but just focusing on the income statement or P&L accounts down here. So if you haven't used this sort by column, this is nice. You just select the column that you want to use and you tell Power BI, okay, when I sort on account category, look at the value in this other column to actually sort this column. So this is a bit of a newer feature, and without this, P&Ls wouldn't necessarily be possible inside of business or inside of Power BI because they're not a great way to sort it outside of this feature. So using this sort by column can be a really, really nice feature to get your sections of your P&L to organize properly. Okay, and then last up, we've got our calendar table. A simple calendar. I ran calendar auto. That pulled in the date, month and year, and I've actually got a month and year sort order in here as well. All right, now that we see what the data looks like, let's jump back to this visual and let's take a look at some of the relationships that I have built between these tables. Relationships are key inside of Power BI. Without having relationships, your data is not going to flow together. So starting from our fact entries, we have a one-to-many relationship between our chart of accounts and our GL entries, which makes sense. So if we hover over this here, we can see it is a relationship between the chart of accounts number and the GL accounts number inside our GL entries table. That makes sense there. Here we've got our chart of accounts categories. There's a one-to-many relationship between the description of the category and the account subcategory description. That's not ideal. You don't want to work it off of text. Ideally, there would be some kind of unique number, some other unique identifier. In this case, with the way that Business Central is designed, the two are almost always going to be in sync. So that's not too big of a concern. And then down here, we've got date, and we've got that synced up with posting date. So we have a one-to-many relationship between your calendar and your GL entries. All right, so now we just want to take a high-level view, make sure all of our data flows look good. So we've got a one-to-many here, a one-to-many here, and a one-to-many here. So we don't have any many-to-many relationships. We don't have any many-to-one relationships between our dimensions and our fact entries. So everything looks good here from a relationship and data standpoint. So let's take a look at our report that I've started with so far. Big thing here inside of our report is going to be this section right here. So this will be the main place that a user would drill down into their financials and take a little bit more detailed look at what's going on. So this visual right here is actually a matrix. So there is a table visualization inside of Power BI, but it doesn't let you do collapsing and expansion of rows and a few other features that we need. So instead, we are going to be using a matrix instead. If we look at the rows here, we've got accounts, account subcategory, and we've got name. So if we stack these rows together like we have here, what it allows us to do is we can drill down or drill up into different sections. So for example, if we want to see just a really high level, here we've got income, cost of goods sold, expense, and we got our net income. That's great. If we want to look a little bit deeper into our income, say, all right, we've got income, product sales, and sales discounts. That's great. And so now we know what is making up our income. But let's come down here to expenses and let's see. Some of this data is not super detailed. So a lot of these, there's only a one-to-one relationship. But we can even drill down here and we can see the actual accounts. Whoops. We can actually see the actual accounts that make up these categories. So again, this is a sandbox environment. There's not many accounts that make up each one of these categories, but let's say under salaries expense, let's say I had 7 different accounts under that category, then I would be able to expand this and be able to see each one of those and see exactly what is going into these subtotals that are being created. So a few quick ways to navigate through a matrix. If you want to drill down or drill up, very easily, you can right click and you've got this expand and you've got collapse, which are 2 quick options if you want to expand the entire table or collapse it. So if you want to collapse, you can do collapse all. So now we've just got our 3 levels up here, our 3 highest ones. But if we want to see all the details at once, we can say expand all, and that's going to break out everything into the accounts down to the lowest level that we have, which is the account name here. All right, so let's collapse this just so we have a nice high-level overview here. And let's take a look at the columns that we have. So first column that we have is the amount. This is just a simple summary of the amount that we are looking at for the given time frame. Next up, we have the 2016 amount. So this filtered on 2017 data. So we wanted to compare it to the previous year of 2016. So we're able to pull in the 2016 data here. Next, we've got a last year variance column. So what this is doing, it is taking the amount minus the 2016 amount and giving us a last year variance. And then our last column is simply just a variance percentage, which is last year variance minus 2016. So, or divided by 2016 and giving us a percentage increase or decrease. And the way that I built these are all with measures. So if we take a quick look, measures can be rather complex for a lot of different folks. So I don't want to jump into and drill down into this too much. But one thing that can be really nice is if you set up your measures in certain ways, then you don't really have to use any of the original columns. So as you can see here, looking at this report in this visual, none of the original columns are checked. The only columns I'm using are actually measures. So if we take a look at our basic one, we take a look at amount total, we can see the amount total is equal to the sum of the amount. Pretty basic one. That's actually a good building block, and we can build measures off of measures. So we've got our basic amount total, and then let's say we want to take the inverse of the amount total. So I took the inverse of the amount total because, like I said before, we want our incomes to be positive and our cost of goods sold and our expenses to be negative. So you can see I just took the amount total, multiplied by -1, and that's how I got the inverse. All right. So next we can take a look at another measure that I did. This one is a bit more complicated. This one is the last year inverse amount total. So it's the same thing as this inverse amount total. I just want to take a look at it for the last year. Now to do that, I ran a calculate function on inverse amount total, right? That's the sum. That's the measure that I want to summarize. And then using using a formula called sample period last year, I was able to take a look at the same period just last year, given the date from my calendar table. So this is an easy way to look at the same period in the last year and run some measure off of that. And so I was able to get my last year inverse amount total. And then there's last year variance, which is simply inverse amount total versus last year's. And then we've got the percentage, which is the variance divided by the amount total. So just using a couple of measures can be really powerful to build these visuals that has all the custom data in slice and dice in the way that you're looking for. If you're not very familiar with creating measures inside of Power BI, it is a bit more advanced. It is somewhat similar to building Excel formulas, but there's just a few different paradigm shifts that are going to happen between Excel inside of and Power BI. So it is a little bit of a learning curve, but once you understand some of the basics and some of the fundamentals, then you understand how Power BI works, and you'll be able to build lots of different measures very quickly and build reports as a whole very quickly as well. The other thing is, if you look at something like last year inverse amount total, if this is just a mouthful, if you're not understanding what's going on, you just like to see the visual and you want us at TrinSoft to build this entire report for you, we're absolutely more than happy to do it. So we do both training and just be your hands and your feet and actually build the reports. So it's completely up to you. If this is something that you want to learn how to do, we're more than happy to train you on how to use Power BI, how to connect to your data sources, everything that I've shown here, but we're also more than happy to just build the reports. If you tell us what you want, if you tell us your data sources, we're more than happy to build it. All right, next, let's take a look at a few other visuals that we have here. Here, I've got my net income growth. I have this simply set as last year variance. That's the only value that we need here. If we go to the format, this is where I can set my min percentage, my max percentage, and kind of my target. So we're going for really aggressive growth. We're going for 30% growth. We're able to meet 29. And if we take a look at the gauge axis here, we've got a min, max, and a target value set. So max is 0.5, target is 0.3. Let's say this is a bit aggressive. Let's say we actually wanted to go for 0.2. Now our target here is at 20%. Next up, we've got a donut chart. So this is slightly different. A donut chart is simply just a pie chart with the hole missing in the middle. So this is a good way just to see kind of overall from a visual perspective, is my income greater than my cost of goods sold and my expenses? And say, yes, it is. Now you can see kind of a chunk. Okay, it's making up, of my expense side, most of it is going to cost of goods sold. In this data set is actually not super complete. As you can see, there's not many expenses listed here, but if they're a bit more fleshed out, you'll be able to see that data there as well. And so for this, I've got my category and account subcategory description for my legend here. The details are the account subcategory description, and then my values are the absolute values of the total. Now, this absolute total measure, I'll take a look at here. You can see this is just the sum of the absolute total. This is the absolute value of the amount total. Pretty simple. The reason why this needs to be an absolute value is because if I had positives and negatives on this donut chart, the donut chart's not going to like that. It's only going to show the positive values. So you need to make sure to select the absolute values of the two, so you're only getting positives, because if you try and display a negative cost of goods sold on your pie chart or your donut chart, it's not going to display anything. So make sure that those are positive. Then the last section that we have down here is a nice income versus cost of goods sold. So this is a simple line graph going over time, and you can see your income versus cost of goods sold. So on the axis, I've got the month. So this is the month broken down here. And then I've got my values. I've got income and cost of goods sold. So these are two other measures that I created. This one is actually inverse income. So this is calculating the inverse amount total where the account category is equal to income. So just doing running a simple measure just off of a filter where the account category is equal to income. And cost of goods sold is going to be the same way, but it is taking the inverse cost of goods sold. So this is same thing, just taking the inverse amount total and running it against the cost of goods sold. You can see here what I said before, that measures really build off of one another. So it can be really beneficial to start with some very basic measures that just kind of sum your data together or group your data in different ways. And then from there, you can build on top of that with other measures and create some really powerful data measures with not much work. All right. Same thing applies here to the cost of goods sold that I mentioned here in your pie and donut graph. If you want to see these together, kind of in a line that looks somewhat parallel to one another, you're going to need to take the absolute value of both of these. So this is going to need to be positive on both sides, because normally up here we've got our income as positive and our cost of goods sold to be negative. So we actually flip the sign on the cost of goods sold so that it is showing it as a positive value, just so that they show closely to one another. All right. And the last feature that we have, it may be somewhat hidden down here at the bottom, but we actually have a date slicer down here. So this is, if we select this, you can see over here, the field is simply month and year. We brought that in from our calendar. And what this will do is this will slice and dice our data throughout this entire visual just from clicking on these options down here. So if I just want to see 1 month, if I just want to see March of 2017, let me clear this and I'll select March of 2017. You can see my income, cost of goods sold, and expense just for that 1 month. And I can compare it to last year as well. Now, I will say the net income growth looks a little off. The pie chart might look a little off, and the income and cost of goods sold might look a little off because, again, this is a line graph. It's not necessarily designed to look at 1 month in particular, but now you can see just from 1 month what your income was, and you can select as many different months as you want. You can go through here over time and drill into it that way, or there's a select all button here and you can choose select all and you can get back to your normal visual. So if you find yourself looking at a specific month or something that's not necessarily over time, what I would recommend doing, here's my next tip, is create a income statement by month dashboard. So like I said, when I select on just one of these months, you can see this graph isn't as useful anymore. This net income growth isn't as useful anymore either. Now, what would be better would be if I could replace this area on the dashboard with a different visual that is a bit more useful. So either with different filters applied, either comparing last year to this year, anything else like that. I would recommend creating a separate one where you just view individual months, and then you can display a lot more information that is relevant to the time frame that you have selected. So either add some different bar charts down here. You could add additional tables. You could do really anything you want, but making it specific to looking at data 1 month at a time. Whereas this is kind of a high level overview. This is looking at everything either year to date or looking over multiple months. That would be my recommendation. Create a separate tab for this. You can even simply start just duplicating this page and running with it from there. All right, so this is my data. This is my dashboard that I have so far, and this is good. There's actually one other thing that I want to add here. I have a little bit extra data that was not added inside of Business Central. It's actually inside a spreadsheet. You know, there's lots of ways to get data inside of Power BI. You can see here, these are just some of the few that you can connect with out of the box with Power BI. Again, you can see all of these different options that you can pull data from natively with Power BI. If you don't see something listed here, you can actually create a custom one. And that's something that we've done in the past. If you have another data source, either something that is not listed here, something that's a bit more unique, we're more than happy to help build a data connection so you can pull your data into Power BI. So let us know if that's something we can help you with. So all my data so far has been from Business Central, which is great. Either OData or you got Dynamics 365 Business Central, which is great. But inevitably, you're probably going to have some data in some Excel workbooks that you're going to want to pull. So in this case, I've actually got a separate workbook that we can take a look at right now. And what this information is really this column right here. This is the division. So this company in 2016, they decided to split the company into multiple divisions from 2016 and 2017. So you can see now they have 4 different divisions. They have a Northeast, Northwest, Southeast, and Southwest. So this data did not get put into Business Central. It's just something that they got afterwards. But for every single entry inside of Business Central, what they did is they came in here and they assigned a division to it. So this is just a spreadsheet, and we can bring this spreadsheet in and we can filter on this division. So in order to do that, let's come back over here to Power BI. Let me actually close out of this workbook first. All right, so I'm just on the home tab of my reports. Under data, there's an option here for an Excel workbook. So it's going to ask me which data, which workbook I want to bring in. And we can say, all right, this is the TrinCon 2021 divisional data. That was the workbook I was just looking at, and we can open this. What it's going to do is it's going to scan this entire workbook for a couple of different things. It's going to scan it for tables first, but it's also going to scan it for the worksheets as well. So in my case, I had a table on a worksheet, and that was all that I had. But if you have multiple tables on one worksheet, then you can select the table that you want, or you can select the entire worksheet. In my case, the table has all the data that we need, entry number, all this data here, and the division. So I am going to check the box, for table 3. And I actually want to massage this data a little bit. So I will say transform data. This will open up our Power Query editor and will give us an opportunity to adjust this data a little bit. So first thing that I want to do is I just want to get rid of extra columns that I don't need. Looking at this data here, entry number, posting date, GL account number, account name, our amount, and our division. Now, all the data, the posting date, GL account number, and name, and amount, all of that I already have in my fact GL entries table. So I don't need to bring this in again. And to make my page a little bit faster, I'm going to delete the columns I don't need. So I don't need posting date or any of the ones through here. So I'm going to hold down my shift key, click the amount column, and that will select these columns. I'm going to remove columns. So now I'm left with just entry number and division, which is great. This is the only things that I need from this table. Next up, I'm going to adjust the query name. Instead of it saying table 3, I need something a bit more descriptive. And this is actually going to be a dimension. So we'll say dimension, and we'll call it division. All right. There's one last thing that I'm going to do. This is personal preference, but I want to take a look at my column data types. Now, some people like to have our entry numbers as numbers. I personally prefer them to make them text. So yes, they are numbers. Yes, you could add them together or anything like that. But this entry number here, this is not a number that we're going to do math with. It's not an amount that we're going to sum. It's not a percentage that we're going to calculate. This is a number, but it's strictly just for reference. So we don't want Power BI to try and sum this information together or anything like that. So we're going to change the data type to text. So now this is a very simple table, but it's got everything that I need. It has the entry number and it has the division, and we should be good to go from here. So I will close and apply this and give it a second to bring in the data. Now I do have the setting turned on where it's automatically going to try and create some relationships for us. And it was not able to create a relationship for us, but that's okay. This is a simple one that we can do. So if I scroll to the right here, I've got my division table here. All right, and now I've got division and entry number. I'm just going to link this up with my GL entries. So if I see here my entry number, now I've got entry number, link that with my entry number, and I should see a one-to-one relationship, and that's great. One-to-one, one-to-many, those are good relationships that you want to have between your supporting tables and your fact tables. Come over here, take a look at the data real quick, make sure everything looks good when it came in. Yep, we got an entry number and we got a division. That's great. So now let's create a slicer to slice the data that we see here based upon certain divisions. So let us create a new visual. This one is going to be of type slicer. All right, and there's simply just going to be one field that we are going to bring in, and that is on the division table. So we are going to bring over the division group onto the field here, And here we've got our 4 options. Let me resize this a little bit and fit it right here. Okay, that looks good. Now, you can use the checkboxes if you want. I personally don't prefer that. I prefer the drop-down option. So if you click this arrow here, you can go to drop-down, and now you have a drop-down with all of your options listed. So if I just want to see it for the Southwest division, just for Southeast, you can see as I click these, my line graphs change based upon each one of the regions. And if I wanted to, I can actually hold down the control key and I can select multiple. So if I want to select Southeast and Southwest together, now I can see their data there. And if I just want to see North, I can select these two and view their data there. You can see my matrix up here is also updates from Northeast. You can see this last year variance is majorly down from 2016 to 2017. Well, that's because the company kind of split up, divided its resources. So now the Northeast division shrunk and split into 4 different divisions. So Northwest, Southeast, and Southwest, 2016 amount. This is going to be empty because we don't have data dating back to 2016 because these divisions didn't exist. The company just didn't have divisions, multiple divisions. They only had their Northeast division in 2016. So now I've got all of these selected, or you can actually select none. That's the same thing as selecting all. And now I've got another way to slice and dice my data to look at it from an income statement and P&L standpoint. All right, so thanks everyone for taking some time to run through this. This is a very high level overview. This is, again, just the tip of the iceberg of what you can do inside of Power BI. A lot of people were kind of afraid to do financials inside of Power BI. You know, is it missing some features? Is it missing some accuracy that I really want to make sure that I have? Well, using some of these tips and creating some of these measures is a great way to ensure data accuracy and make it really simple and easy to create these reports. So, like I said previously, we are more than happy to teach you guys how to use Power BI. Any client that wants to is more than welcome to reach out, and we'd be more than happy to teach you how to use Power BI. But if you also just say, hey, I like this report, I want to see something like this, just 1 or 2 small things, I use Business Central, can you build me a report? We're more than happy to do that as well and really be your hands and your feet and make any adjustments that you want to these reports. So all that being said, appreciate your guys' time. Thank you.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you, Nicholas, for the wonderful information regarding Power BI and financial reporting. We now have a few minutes for questions. So our team, again, has been monitoring the Q&A to address some of those questions, which we can certainly do. Nicholas is on with us. Nicholas, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Perfect. So we have a couple questions that have come in. One, this person just want to say thank you. So definitely thank you for your time on the Power BI. But a couple questions, you were showing, P&L there. Can you build a balance sheet within Power BI as well?
You can, absolutely. There are certain things that Power BI is good for, and some things, like I mentioned in the video, that Power BI is not so great for. Balance sheet, I would say, probably is one of those things that Power BI is not great for. Most of the time when you're looking at a balance sheet, you're going to be looking at it at a given date and time. And so, things like line graphs aren't going to be as useful. And that's going to be something that you're going to take and you're going to hand to your executives during a quarterly report, or something that you're just going to want to look at year over year, just kind of in a static report, more so than something that you're going to want to drill down and see over time. Now, that being said, that doesn't mean that it wouldn't be useful to take a look at some of your balance sheet accounts in detail. For example, if you want to see kind of an aged AP or an aged AR inside of your inside of Power BI, I think that would be a great use case for it. Or if you want to see inventory values over time, that would be great. But building a balance sheet that you're going to interact with, not a very common use case for Power BI.
Okay, got it. And just a reminder for anyone on the session, if you do have a question, drop that into the Q&A. We can definitely get that answered for you. Or if it's something more specific to your organization, please reach out to us. We'll have our contact information up here in a bit, and we'll be happy to reach out for you as well. So Nicholas, one other question, what about building a statement of cash flows within Power BI?
Yeah, that can definitely be done as well. Statement of cash flows can be kind of difficult and tricky to build, especially when you start talking about forecasting. So when you're forecasting cash flows, there's a lot that needs to go into it, a lot that might not be best suited for Power BI. So for example, if you want to estimate the average amount of time or your average payment terms for each one of your customers, even if you say they're net 30, they may end up paying in 14 days on average. So that kind of information is kind of hard to determine inside of Power BI. And that information really needs to come from your ERP system. Something like Business Central definitely has a lot of capabilities for doing cash flows, both historic and forecasting. And then really it's just a question of, can you take Power BI and connect it to your ERP that's going to have all that data source, that's going to do all the analytics, all the number crunching, everything for you, and just have the data, and then just let you access that data, interact with it, visualize it, slice and dice it however you want. And yep, that is absolutely a great use case for Power BI.
Perfect. So you hit on forecasting, but what about budgeting? Are we able to include, budgets in some of this analysis to compare, budgeted versus actual, that type of
Yes,
detail within Power BI?
absolutely. Yep, absolutely. And that's a very common use case as well. So in the visual that I showed earlier, what I shared was just this year versus last year. Well, a lot of people might want to see this year versus budgeted this year. So if budgeting is important, then we can absolutely bring that information in right alongside your actual data. And then from there, you have the opportunity to create a lot of neat visuals to see your differences and your variance between your budget and your actual, both on the expense side and on the revenue side as well. And again, as soon as you add more filters, doing more drilling down, like I added there at the end with the multiple divisions, you can see, which you can even do budgeting by division as well. So if you want to do budgeting for your Northwest division, then you can see that inside of Business Central. And again, as long as you have your data there inside of your ERP, inside of basically some data source that Power BI can pull from, then really we can visualize just about anything. So biggest thing that really drives all of these visuals in Power BI is data. It's not a fun thing to talk about. It's a little bit more of the boring stuff. It's not the flashy visuals, but without having the good, solid underlinement of that good data, you're not going to be able to build any visuals on top of it. So if you have that budgeting data, yep, we can absolutely bring it in and visualize it in Power BI.
Perfect. Okay, well, great. All right. Any other questions? Definitely drop that into the Q&A. Nicholas, I'm not seeing any others come through. We definitely appreciate your time on this session and for answering these questions. Thank you.
No problem. I'm happy to help.
All right. And as you guys can see, we're very excited about Power BI. We want you guys to be excited too. So, as for attendees for being a part of this session, we're offering one free custom Power BI dashboard. It doesn't have to be something like we're seeing here. If you have a specific report or set of data in mind that you'd like to do, reach out to us. Send me an email, bhaggard@trinsoft.com, and just in the subject, put free custom dashboard. We'll know exactly what that means. We will set up a time to meet, probably an initial 30-minute meeting with your team to understand your reporting needs, the data sources. And then our team will work on, building that free custom dashboard for you. Like I said, we're very into Power BI. We think it's, a very powerful reporting visualization tool. And we want you guys, our clients, the people we work with, our partners, to be excited about it too. And so we're offering up this free custom dashboard as well. All right, so remember, just send me an email, bhaggard@trinsoft.com, but free custom dashboard in the subject, and we'll follow up with you after that. All right, next steps, a little bit of homework here for you. First, be sure to complete that session evaluation prior to the end of the day Friday so that you're entered into the drawing for our giveaways. Secondly, if you haven't already done so, hit up trinsoft.com. Give us a follow. We are often putting different information out there about blogs, releases, content that's often helpful for our clients. If you miss a session, hit up the website, trinsoft.com. We will be posting the slides and the video recordings. So just hit that up and we will be sure to get that sent your way if for some reason you can't find it. Thirdly, contact us for support needs, questions, help with Power BI, help with sourcing data, where to find that data, etc. We're happy to help make those connections and help you guys to be more efficient in your reporting, help automate some of that reporting as well. And then finally, give us a like or a follow on social media. We're on Twitter at TrendSoft. We're on Facebook, on LinkedIn. Please give us an update. We're often posting updates, release information, webinars, etc. Give us a follow, give us a like, and we'll follow up as needed. All right, that's all I had. Thank you guys very much for attending not just today's session on Power BI, but all of the sessions here in our TrinCon virtual event. On behalf of our entire TrendSoft team, we certainly thank you to each of our clients for attending. We know it's a busy day, and we're glad that you were able to take a few minutes out of your time to attend our event. We look forward to continuing partnering and working with you guys in the future. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Thanks.